wherever in the heck in the world you are. It's the one and only the Guerrilla Economist coming to you live with Matthew Ehret, the one and only Matthew Ehret from The Great Game. You can catch him here on Rogue. You can catch him also, most importantly, on his Substack, substack.com/Matthew Ehret, as well as risingtidefoundation.net and the CanadianPatriot.org. Get Matthew's latest books. It's going to be absolutely critical for you to get so you can understand the play-by-play of what is going on today. And with that being said, Matthew, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon to you too, my good friend.
We're both, folks, you got to excuse us. We're both working on lack of sleep. Matt's been up since, he went to sleep crazy late last night. He's had a call international 5 a.m. Same thing with me. We're both shot, so cut us some slack today, please.
Yeah, if we start rambling on in segues, it's it's all part of the plan.
It's all part of the plan. We're both, making friends with our cup of coffees here.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, it's there's no excuse to wish for more sleep these days. I mean, the world is on fire. It's as Finney and Cunningham made a point, diplomacy has turned into a giant dumpster fire.
For the West, yes.
Yeah, I felt really bad. I listened to the Russian ambassador to the United Nations today, and I feel for that guy. He's really earning his paycheck. My God, he with everything that's happened with this giant psyop in Bucha near Kiev.
Yep.
This is on, everyone is being bombarded with these terrible images of dead bodies, people, civilians who have obviously been murdered. And we're all being spun the same narrative that this was obviously the rapacious Nazi-like Russian soldiers who just want to kill civilians. They've been, stealing gold teeth. Actually, somebody at the United Nations, one of the representatives, I think it was Zelensky, actually, yeah, who spoke to the UN Council or the United Nations today, and I just finished listening to his speech too. He's actually saying that they're stealing gold teeth with blood on them, and just making all these parallels to the Nazis. The U.S. ambassador to the UN said, they're kidnapping Ukrainians and bringing them to Russia to put them in concentration camps, which we all know what that means. Literally, that's literally the type of over-the-top stuff. Where the reality is obviously the very opposite. There has been refugees en masse that have been provided immense amount of aid. I mean, millions of tons of humanitarian aid has been provided. We've seen only layers upon layers of lies. And I mean, who are the ones who are running the Nazis, who have the Nazi problem? I mean, this is obviously the case that Ukraine has had the torchlit marches, have carried out massacres, have lit people on fire. You see pictures of people who have gotten beaten up and taped to flagpoles for having like a Russian accent by the Ukraine or these paramilitary groups embedded within the Ukrainian armed forces. And then you have, the Russian ambassador who's forced to call a press conference. Maybe there's like 5 journalists who show up because he couldn't convene a meeting of the UN Security Council. Yeah. Just basically that's his right as a leading member of the Security Council. This is the first time he said in history that an attempt was made to call a meeting based on the fact that this is obviously a security issue. What's cropping up here, and he was rejected by the British, who are currently the sitting presidents or the heads of the council for this year. It's never occurred, and he had to lay out his case of why this is a psyop, why this is a complete false flag, the murders in Bucha. And I mean, the facts are just clear, Russia, they left. There was in the build up to the Russian-Ukrainian meeting that happened in Turkey on April 2nd. But before that, part of that agreement was, okay, Russia was going to leave Bucha, and they left on the 31st of March. Yeah. The day after that, the mayor of Bucha gave a speech celebrating the fact that they're independent again. The Russians have left, and he's all shits and giggles and laughing and happy, and no mention whatsoever of dead rotting bodies that have just been killed the day before, littered all over the streets of Bucha. because
Right.
there's a lot of bodies. Not a single mention of that. Um, and it's only then 3 days later, after after you have the media brought in and figures within the Ukrainian paramilitary groups brought in, that all of a sudden we have now this footage of dead people. Um, my God, like there's no sense of rigor mortis, like just basic doing, you know, the Russian ambassador lays this out. You just look at these bodies. There's no sense that they've been dead for 4 days, which is what you would
Right.
have to expect if the Russians killed them and left them lying there. There's no blood, like blood. The blood isn't forming in ways that you would expect scientifically after this happens. People have boxes. The people who were shot, most of them had boxes of Russian humanitarian aid food boxes that have been given out. You could clearly see the label. So these are people who are, very friendly figures to Russia. And the entire time Russia had occupied Bucha before that, there wasn't a single case of any type of civilian violence or casualties or anything of the sort. There was free flow of mobility. People were able to film. They had full internet access. So if there really was these Russian orcs, from Lord of the Rings running
Yeah.
around murdering people, you'd think that some people would have like filmed it and uploaded it to the internet. That, that didn't happen. So yeah, this is very clearly a complete piece of theater. Ugly
No,
piece of
I mean the way that they were killed as well. You've seen that style before. That style is Azov. They were
Mhm.
killed in the same way Azov was torturing those POWs. It's the same thing over and over again. And this is what the
Yeah.
internet. This is what's going to be shown to the world. I mean, these people are sick. And now the
Mhm.
theater, you got that comedian actor supposedly on the ground, supposedly in Bucha, supposedly touring the war crime scene. It's remarkable that anybody gives these morons any sort of credence. People should be mortified. People need to wake up.
Mhm. Well, the Joaquin Flores posted a video of Zelensky coming out doing a little show with his advisors with their military gear next to him, and he said, "Well, isn't it strange that the Ukrainians um, did when they pasted their flags on, there was his advisors standing right next to him. He has, and you could watch the video. The Ukrainian flag is upside down. The yellow is on top, the blue is on the bottom. If you were truly a Ukrainian patriot, you would pay attention to like whether you're wearing an upside down flag that you just like pasted onto your jacket. So you've got obviously tons of foreign influence. This guy, like you said, is a marionette. He's a puppet. He's a showman. He's super corrupt. I mean, the fact that this guy has, we talked about this last week and the week before, but I mean, the fact that he has like well over $600 million in assets that have been like passed through these different shell companies in the Virgin Islands, the British Commonwealth, Virgin Islands and Cayman Islands. Like this guy is just completely rotten to the core. And then you have, uh, uh, Kolomoisky, the guy who's owned his whole career. We talked about that. This billionaire who runs through a couple of other shell companies, Burisma Holdings, which ties in Joe Biden. This guy is the financier of Azovs. That's openly acknowledged. He's the guy who even created Vanessa Beeley. Just gave a really great interview, and she made a point. He's also the guy who created the Israel European Parliament in 2011. Like it's over the top. The level of evil that's multifaceted, but all is concentrated in the same little coterie of fanatics. A lot of this is fortunately coming to the surface, but still, I mean, it's just wild the level of make believe that they're putting out there. And like you said, these are using the same techniques as the Azovs have used to kill people. The many of the bodies had their hands tied before being killed.
Yep.
There's just so much indicating this. But I mean, as the outcome is concerned, and again, I watched the Zelensky speech. Now, many people are confused by the fact that Russia and China will often speak well about the United Nations Charter, saying that the basis for a viable world order means returning to the principles embedded in the UN Charter. And a lot of people say, "Oh, that's just proof that they're also in on the New World Order. They're, that's a globalist institution. Obviously, it's about one world government, depopulation. So they're all in on it. Any type of resistance is a fake." And it's like, no. If you listen to like Zelensky, it was very clear. His whole ugly speech at the United Nations today. He's openly now calling for number one, best case scenario immediately is first expel Russia from the UN Security Council because they have a veto, and that's they're too evil to have a veto, so they have to be expelled. Number two, he said, if that can't be done, and I don't think it can be done because another member of the UN Security Council also happens to be China. And China and Russia have a deep commitment to stand together. So I don't think China is going to permit that to happen. So the next thing he said is dissolve the UN Security Council completely. Get rid of this whole idea of nation states having, or power, certain key powerful nation states having a veto. That's it's not in harmony with world peace, as if he cares. And then he said, we also need to immediately set up a new global security architecture and rewrite the UN Charter. So what is this new architecture you want to create? Why do you want to rewrite the UN Charter? If the UN Charter was this evil foundation for globalism and world government, then why do these evil globalists and one world governmentalists want to rewrite this UN Charter? And so this is a useful thing to keep in mind, because I got to say, unlike the League of Nations, which was attempted, it was created in 1919, the same time that Chatham House was created in the Treaty of Versailles after World War I. Unlike the League of Nations, which was an anti-nation state organization to create a banker's dictatorship, the United Nations was actually based at its origins on a very different idea, which was pushed by people like Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Henry Wallace, many other people around the world who wanted to break humanity free of empire. So I figured just quickly, the charter that Zelensky and his controllers, even people like George Soros, have said this has to be rewritten. Lord Mark Malloch Brown, the former second in command at the United Nations, who brought in the responsibility to protect protocols, R2P, back in 2001, 2, 3, 4. The thing they want to destroy is the following. The UN Charter literally says that its mandate is, number one, Article 1, to maintain international peace and security, and to that end, to take effective collective measures for the prevention and removal of threats to peace. Okay, you could say that sounds like a world government institution. Okay, but what else? It says, and for the suppression of acts of aggression and other breaches of the peace, and to bring about by peaceful means and in conformity with the principles of justice and international law, adjustments or settlements of international disputes or situations which might lead to a breach of the peace. So it's a focus on diplomacy, not this whole full spectrum dominance, military confrontation, or regime change. That's very clear. Number two, to develop friendly relations amongst nations based on respect for the principle of equal rights and self-determination of peoples, and to take other appropriate measures to strengthen this peace. Number three, to achieve international cooperation in solving international problems of an economic, social, cultural, humanitarian character, and promoting and encouraging the respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms for all without distinction to race, sex, language, or religion. And again, you could say, oh, well, international cooperation, that sounds like globalism. Okay, well, we live on one Earth. Like, honestly, there's problems that transcend individual nations. Whether you like it or not, that happens. So just to say that by itself means you're a one world government depopulationist is really naive and simplistic. The other one is to be a center for harmonizing the actions of nations in the attainment of these common ends. And finally, just in case any imperial legalist wants to read the charter loosely, the second article right away says that the organization of the UN is based on the principle of the sovereign equality of all of its members. It's based on the sovereign nation state as sacred. Yeah. So this is what they've been trying to extract. And even though the UN has become increasingly infiltrated, a corrupted body, and you got things like Lucius Trust Publishing, the publishing company that produces all of their UN literature, formerly known as Lucifer Publishing by Annie Besant and Alice Bailey. Yes. That's all true. That's but they didn't create it. What you have is an organization of evil that has been trying to corrupt everything from the USA itself, which, if you read the US Constitution and Declaration of Independence, they're pretty damn good. But you could see how much evil has been done in their name over the ensuing 250 years. Why? Because you have this supranational parasitical force of evil, which goes back to the days of ancient Babylon, which is, trying to infiltrate and take over every single institution, corrupt it from within, and then have these institutions become instruments for their will. Their will is what? Total dominance, global romanticized feudalism under a transhumanist, modern pagan ideology of a depopulated, dumbed down society. Do Russia and China or India or Iran or other countries with the multipolar alliance look like they're doing that? Are people, right? Are people being uplifted out of poverty and given, skills and education to be more productive? Or is
Yep.
the opposite happening? Like it's happening here in Canada, the US, Europe. Are we getting more dumbed down? Are our skill levels being funneled into, well, nothing, right? I mean, taxi drivers and pizza delivery guys. If you talk to a lot of people who are doing this type of work, they're often people from other countries who have like chemical engineering degrees, and they just can't get work in North America, except as taxi drivers or pizza delivery guys, because we don't value their minds. We're not building anything of value. So it's a very different design and intention behind the words of a new order or UN charter, right? So it's super important for people to pick up on now.
I want to show something real quick, Matt, while you're
Yeah.
mentioning on the decline of the quality of life.
Mm.
Vela's turned me onto this book called Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson. And I've read a few other Neil Stephenson's books, like Necro, Monica. I forgot the name of it. Again, I'm foggy brained as of now. But anyway, Snow Crash. Okay, it's hilarious, and here's how it works. Right. The story opens up in Los Angeles, an unspecified number of years after a worldwide economic collapse. Los Angeles is no longer part of the United States since the federal government has ceded most of its power and territory to organizations and entrepreneurs, and franchising and individual sovereignty. The private vehicles reign supreme. Mercenary armies compete for national defense contracts, while private security guards preserve the peace in sovereign gated housing developments. Highway companies compete to attract drivers to their roads, and all the mail delivery is by hired courier. The remnants of the government maintain authority only in isolated compounds, where they do tedious make work that is, by and large, irrelevant to society around them. Much of the world's territory has been carved up into sovereign enclaves known as the Franchise Organization Quasi-National Elites, or the FOQNEs, each run by its own big business franchise, such as Mr. Lee's Greater Hong Kong, or the corporatized American Mafia, or various residential burbclaves. In the future, American institutions are far different from those of the actual United States. At the time, and basically what he talks about is like the United States is going to be good at two things: video game development and pizza delivery.
That's pretty on point. Yeah.
It is a dystopic future, man. But that's what it's food. I mean, this was written what, 1999, right? Or no, I'm sorry, 92, right?
Is it really? Okay.
Yeah, it was written in 1992,
Yeah.
long before Uber Eats, long before DoorDash. Here we are, man.
Well, you look at it, right? You can go back to Aldous Huxley's first little foray into predictive programming with Brave New World, which was written in like 1932 or something for the first draft. And like it's jarring just how obsessed they are with this script that they've been really, really working heavily on to try to create a society that looks a lot like kind of a mix of the Brave New World with a little bit of enmeshment with Orwell's 1984. One's a little bit more of an overt tyranny, right? With your little controlled behaviorist 2 minutes of hate every day and all of the other the others, but it's sort of like a mix of both. And it's like, it's not that hard. I don't think this guy, Neil Stephenson, was part of the conspiracy. I mean, at a certain point, I think that what they've done, though, is they created a cultural movement, a dystopic cultural movement that shapes the imagination of young creative people in the future generations who went and became artists, movie makers, filmmakers, and they're so themselves influenced by Soylent Green and Planet of the Apes and Brave New World and all of this like dystopic stuff that when they go and think that they're utilizing their creativity, they're actually just adaptively finding ways to advance this, these scenarios, which are then, money is poured into a lot of these things that become movies, like the Children of Men, is another one.
Oh yeah,
Men or whatever, right? And the CIA is behind a lot of the movies and the money behind the movies that get, or the scripts that get turned into movies, that we are then so influenced by, that then shape the younger generation. So it's like the self-perpetuating system of creativity, but a bounded creativity. Like, it's bounded by cynicism, misanthropy, depression, fear of the future, and like it's just sort of like feeds itself, right? And it just amplifies those feelings in the next generation. And you compare that to something a little bit more optimistic, like it's hard to find that nowadays, but like if you read Jules Verne, the from the French science fiction author from the 1880s, 90s, and his works were so optimistic. It was really based on a very different idea of science fiction. Is based on a celebration of humankind and what we could accomplish by going into the unknown and colonizing another planet, like his Earth to the Moon is great, or the journey to the center of the Earth, or all of these things. It's about like how human beings overcome impossible challenges and adopt science and technology for the good. And that's what people like H.G. Wells went to war with, to disrupt that flow, because I think there was the power of the control of the zeitgeist of the imagination is really the key battleground, and who could influence most the zeitgeist will influence the herd, the mankind more. And one type, the H.G. Wells type definitely, and the Aldous Huxley type definitely has the herd more inclined to adapt to anti-human situations, because it's like, if you expect it, everyone kind of thinks of the future in a terrible way. They will be more inclined to not resist it and adapt to it, rather than fight morally against something unjust. Versus the Jules Verne way, which will give people a standard of like, what is normal is what is just. And if you see something unjust happen in the future, you should do something to invoke your creative spirit to fight it. And that type of thing is verboten in the oligarchical tool chest. There's a few things that still do that. Like, there was that movie with Matt Damon, The Martian, in 2015, which did that. It tapped into that spirit of overcoming, this guy was going to be left to die on Mars. And the whole thing was like him challenging his fears and making discoveries that he had to make in a certain time frame in order to not die. That was good, but that's rare. That's super rare. Otherwise, it's mostly predictive programming. Who's that guy?
Supposed rumors that are circling hot right now, hot off the press, is that Major General Roger L. Coultier Jr., RLC, has been captured by Russian forces in Ukraine. This is the guy who was from Africom. He's one of the apparatchiks involved in destabilizing Africa. He worked for Africom, and since then he has, he what does he do? He's over in Ukraine. He's like actually, he was the in charge of Ukrainian land forces. Okay, he's the commander of NATO's Allied Land Command, an active deputy for the Ukrainian Land Forces, Major General. That's what he was. So this guy is actively involved, and the last known whereabouts of this guy was in the Yavoriv area in Ukraine, and he was part of continuing staff talks between NATO and Ukrainian forces. So this guy is a guy who's a no-gooder. This is a guy who's up to no good. He's created trouble in Africa. You want to talk about American Green Berets getting killed in Niger? This is when Americans find out there's actually a country called Niger in Africa, and we found what the hell are Green Berets doing there? Why are they getting killed? It's because of assholes like this guy. This is one of the assholes who was in charge of that. So there's a rumor right now that, and even Joaquin just posted it as well, that the Russian army has captured. The rumor is unconfirmed. U.S. Major General Roger L. Coultier, Major General Roger Coultier, the U.S. Africa Command HQ Chief of Staff in the besieged Ukrainian Azov camp in Mariupol. So this asshole, if this is proven correct, then this asshole was out there coordinating with the Ukrainian forces in the Azov Brigade And I don't need to show you guys. I got some very graphic photos of the Ukrainian Marines in Mariupol who were absolutely torched, utilizing Russia's advanced next generation flamethrower technology. Incredible. This is
I got.
Yeah.
That's big. Yeah, I really want to get confirmation on that. That's interesting.
Me too. I'm
Yeah,
waiting
these
for
guys
confirmation.
definitely have their hands. I mean, a lot of blood on their hands. I mean,
Huge.
and U.S. Africom has had a lot of connection to supporting different groups that have received support, like Boko Haram and other groups in Mali and beyond that are just used as tools, like it's the African branch of ISIS. To destabilize nations that you want to overthrow because they're a little bit too sovereign in their like currently what's going on in Ethiopia around the Tigray People's Liberation Army, which is a terrorist organization in the north, which has been utilized by U.S. intelligence, and the U.S. military has been all over this thing to try to upset and overthrow the Ethiopian government, because the Ethiopians are very much pro-Russia, pro-China, and pro-development. They're actually able to emit sovereign credit for the development of their giant historic Renaissance dam and high-speed rail that they're building with China. And they're also very close to Yemen. But all that to say, these guys, like this fellow who maybe has just gotten arrested, are in bed with some dirty characters. And if people are confused about this, I have a little video here as well of an advisor to Zelensky giving his views on ISIS, his admiration of the techniques ISIS uses.
Oh yeah.
Do you see this video right now that I'm
showing?
No,
yeah, I can see. It's up on screen.
You can see it? Okay, I'm gonna just hit play. The commanders of ISIL are considered some of the more wise and successful commanders that there are currently.
Yeah. They died very quickly.
Everything is thought through in detail, even the degree of cruelty. They're that scientific in their cruelty. Cruelty for show. It is inhumane, but it is of a very high level, a wise strategy, taking their particular interests into account. ISIS. All right, there's another interview. There's another interview now. I'm just saying this for people who are just like listening to the audio. He says they are acting very correctly. There is a big book where I analyze ISIL quite well. For them, best practice of how to run business is best practice of governance. I don't get the translation there. Those that the world needs? Parallel to that, this means terrorism, middle-age cruelty, the burning of people, shooting and cutting off of heads. This is absolutely a network of the future. The advisor Arestovich
to President Zelensky.
Advisor. Yeah.
I mean, again, this guy has been smoking the same crack that Hunter Biden was smoking and living in the same echo chambers as these Western morons. This is exactly what's happening. I mean, these people are crazy. I mean, I can't live in a place like this, man. I can't live in a place where my country's government is paying, funding, and providing logistical, material, and financial support for psychopaths like this moron, just as my country's government supported, armed, trained, given logistics to both Al-Qaeda and ISIS. It's the same playbook over and over again. It's ridiculous.
Oh yeah, I know. It's completely. It is very much the same thing, and I mean, it's I think a bit of a learning experience for a lot of people to have to realize that this thing that they thought was their nation is actually largely captured. However, there are still patriotic national institutions that haven't been destroyed. Otherwise, we'd already be dead. The U.S. would already be over had it totally fallen. So there is something there, and I did read. A friend of mine had sent me something from the Texas Republican Convention as one example where there was a unanimous adoption of a restoration of Lincoln's greenbacks and National Bank, which was, a sign of fight. That's a viable thing to do. You need to that's the only thing I see that has any type of fight within it that has some moral validity is within that base of non-neoconservative Republicans, and the Democrats mostly I don't see as being salvageable at this point. But you got things like that. I think that needs to really be amplified and organized a lot more and fast. But otherwise, yeah, like the U.S. has so much blood on its hands. There's so much hypocrisy. But the fact that you also have the failure of all of these things that used to work, the scripts of the New World Order that used to occur without much resistance, the fact that Pakistan just suffered a near coup d'etat against Imran Khan just a couple of days ago. You heard about this, right?
Say again? Oh yeah.
Imran Khan, yeah.
He. Go ahead, man. I'm not. Go ahead. You talk about Imran Khan. Go ahead.
Well, he's come out. He called out the U.S. State Department as running a foreign conspiracy to overturn the Pakistani government.
Yep.
And what happened was there was a vote of no confidence that was declared to force him out, to force his ouster, and this was overturned by the lower house of parliament. Imran Khan has circulated the evidence that this was all coordinated by this fellow Donald Yu, who works for Victoria Nuland, and he's part of the U.S. State Department complex, who threatened the Pakistani ambassador, saying that if he is not ousted, Khan, immediately, there will be vast repercussions. And yeah, I mean, this was supposed to go through. There was members of Khan's own party left his party to vote against him, as part of this coalition opposition party of puppets, who basically the reason why was Khan was, if you look at what he did right before Russia began their military operation in Ukraine, he went to Moscow, met with Putin, solidified that Pakistan-Russian relationship. He also solidified increasingly the Pakistan-China relationship on several occasions with the China-Pakistan economic corridor, which now, as of, April 1st, has turned into this Tunsi declaration. It's a beautiful declaration for Afghanistan reconstruction, but not just Afghanistan, the entire region, which involves Russia, Pakistan, India, Iran, China, and Turkmenistan, as well as a few others, all with great projects for building vast historic oil pipelines, natural gas, rail lines, all the way through the Kaf Herat Railway, which will be built. Extensions from Pakistan and that corridor into Afghanistan, which then could go broader across various parts of the Middle East into Iran, where you have rail being built currently, along with also rail from Iran to Iraq, which easily could intersect with, that's the Shlam Shah Basra Railway now under construction, which could easily be connected to the already existing but defunct, it's been shut down, but it exists, 1,500 kilometer railway that goes all the way across Iraq and into Syria, as part of this broader Belt and Road initiative in the Middle East to offer an uplifting of standards of living, an equalization of not the equalization, that's not the right word, but a putting out of the fires, and a real reconstruction program to give hope to that region once more. So this is now something that Pakistan is on board with. So they're not able to get these regime changes as they used to. Even Ethiopia, which was supposed to, I mentioned it before, they were supposed to be already overturned in a civil war initiated by the United States using proxies like the TPLF, the Tigray People's Liberation Army, which has failed completely. And now they're threatening the U.S. Congress and Senate have their puppets who are introducing bills and legislation to try to completely sanction Ethiopia, which frankly, at this stage in the game, is not such a bad thing, considering that now Russia, China, and others are more than willing to fill that gap. As we saw the sanctions against Russia blow up in America's face, the same thing would happen with Ethiopia. I think that, that's there too. But you also have the war with Yemen. I mean, the Saudis are no longer acting like their well-behaved proxy or, agency, which they have done for decades, really since the British put the House of Saud into power in the 1930s. The Saudis have largely been very well-behaved little corrupt stooges doing whatever their masters tell them, until now they could see where the wind is blowing. They could see that oil does not play a role in the ultimate great game of depopulation under a global great reset and Green New Deal. So they're ultimately recognizing finally that they're disposable, and hence, there's been a much greater openness to having diplomatic dialogue with Syria, with other enemies. Even Iran and Saudi diplomats have opened up a lot of lines of communication and cooperation. UAE, Qatar, various other Gulf states are on board. Even Saudi Arabia was floating the idea as maybe a bit of a threat, but I think maybe even very real, of settling oil payments from this soon in yuan instead of US dollars. And now you have a peace agreement for 2 months. It's just been arranged for all of Ramadan between Yemen and Saudi Arabia. So you finally have a durable chance for a 2-month block of peace. God knows what can come out of that. But this whole zone around the Red Sea that connects Ethiopia, right on the Horn of Africa, to the Arab world, it's easily a place. I mean, this is going to be a dense zone of economic activity and prosperity if you can create some no war there for a little bit. That's going to blossom. And again, it's just, you could almost throw a rock over that little gulf and connect, and between the Arab world and Africa, and easily, I mean, you could build without too much ado. China is already doing things of this sort, either a tunnel or an extensive bridge connecting those worlds, and have that as another extension of the BRI. So that's something which these geopoliticians around Victoria Nuland and others are looking at, and they're freaking out about completely. Pakistan, India has just said they're not going to bend to the pressure of rejecting Russian cheap discounted oil. They said they're more than willing to pay in rubles. And the various representatives from India have said, like, you're asking us to die. We're a country of 300 million poor people, and you're saying to buy overly charged U.S. controlled oil instead of using our neighbor, our ally, Russia. No, you're out of your mind. And even many European countries are not even doing this, even though they're telling us to do it. Germany is not there. They know that they're not going to be able to just cut themselves off of Russian oil. It supplies 40 or was it 52% of Russia's natural gas needs is from Russia.
Well, yeah, 50% of Germany's gas needs. Yes. Well, don't worry, Uncle Schmuck is on the way, Matt. He's sending ships. I'm hearing one little ship per week is going to make port somewhere off the coast of Normandy and unload their petroleum products and their hydrocarbons, and that should be enough to make up for the 42% lack of energy as the Europeans face starvation, as they face economic collapse. BASF, the German chemical manufacturing giant, is on the verge of laying off 42,000 employees, man. It's incredible.
Oh yeah, no, it's a complete disaster. It's such a shit show. They don't know what they're doing. I mean, like, they do in a sense, right? Like, on one sense, they're really committed to this design of getting rid of industrial civilization, forcing the world onto a behavioral modification where we find ourselves reliant upon low quality shit sources of energy like windmills and solar panels, and new types of ways of thinking about economy that involve a green, decarbonized type of market. So in the one sense, they're really committed to doing that. But on the other hand, the world has totally changed from that ivory tower design, of a depopulated world order that they were working on for many decades. You have now all of a sudden half the world, or more even, don't want to commit that mass suicide, and have instead put online, as we talked about last week with Sergei Glaziev being brought back into a dominant position as a Russian economic geostrategist, a completely viable alternative financial, economic, security, cultural architecture, which is not based upon rejecting your religion, rejecting your traditions, your heritage, like ours is. That's the whole basis of, the woke critical race theory. Don't respect anybody over 30 or dead white European males. They're irrelevant or racist because they were white. That whole thing that's really contaminated our society is based upon a design to atomize us, cut us off of the deeper historical continuity that we are actually a part of. And when we tap into that via our family units that transcend individual lifetimes, our nations, right, that transcend individual lifetimes that we could tap our identities into, or even more broadly, our religious traditions, which can go back thousands of years. That access is part of the human persona that ties us into the divine, and something that transcends the individual limitations of our birth and death. They want us to like shape our identities. That's the way these social engineers who think of us as little like gas particles in a machine, right? They just want to control the stochastic behavior of the atomized little bobbing about, gas particles of hedonism. They can only get us to act that way in a predictable fashion, like beasts that will adapt to a herd, to the degree that we don't have access to our full, inner potential, which we can only get when we see that our purpose isn't something bigger than ourselves, because we're all going to die. Animals are not self-aware of their eventual mortality. They can't shape willfully their identities in accordance with that mortality, that fact of that. Whereas human beings,
you're starting to describe the American college student.
I am doing that, unfortunately. Yeah.
I'm going to show you some quick video of some animals who cannot foreshadow or comprehend their future mortality. And this is what happens when you replace math, sciences, engineering, and you replace it with what many are calling it global homo. Here it is. This is what American taxpayer. This is what education's doing, folks.
What are they saying?
F you fascists. Oh yeah, fuck these fascists. There it is. They're all dressed in black.
Oh boy.
In Texas, no less. North Texas.
How does that get by in Texas?
I don't know. So look at them.
Yeah, what a little zombie hive. That's. Oh, and who's this guy?
He's a senator. He's a senator from Texas, and he wants to go there and speak. And this is the response.
And they're directing their rage
towards him.
He's the fascist?
Oh yeah. No, he's not a fascist at all. He doesn't want to have.
No, they're disrupting him.
Yeah, they are disrupting him. Correct. And let me show you something. This is hilarious. Let me.
Yeah, power to the people.
Yeah. Look at this. Psychopaths, no education. Yeah.
Well, that guy's got a lot of patience to stick it out there.
Look at
this. I got a taste of this when I was man, that goes on, eh? That guy just stuck it out there for like a full hour.
I want to show you when he's confronting this here we go. This is it. Ready? Brace your eardrums. Here we go.
Oh no. Oh no.
I am a sir, I'm a man.
That's what happens when nobody realizes what the mind is anymore, and all that they think they can do is that. Oh no, she's actually doing it. Okay, stop. Kill me.
There you go, buddy.
I gotten a full smack of that when Occupy Wall Street was happening, and there's branches all over the world. And at the very beginning, myself and a few colleagues, we were like, okay, let's see what this is, and we were trying to see if this is a process we could influence positively by organizing lectures with the people who would all conglomerated here in the Montreal area.
Sure.
And for the first week or two, it was moving ahead pretty well. We had some constructive people who were working with us, and we were organizing little workshops of what is banking, what is the New World Order, and it was good. It was positive. We were giving speeches, and then all of a sudden, you had Black Bloc. And
oh boy.
Hyper hardcore anarchists just show up and dominate and take the thing over, and it turned it into a little vicious tyranny where there was no more debate or discussion or deliberation around differences. If you didn't agree with them, it was kind of like ISIS, right? If you don't agree with us, you're less than human and worthy of destruction.
Right.
And very quickly, myself and my associates, just because we were bringing up okay, well, you don't like Wall Street. Well, how about let's endorse, let's say, a resolution for adopting Glass-Steagall, to break up the Wall Street banks. If you don't like Wall Street, you're here to occupy it, so-called, right? So let's actually do something constructive that will work to break up the Wall Street banks. And a lot of people liked it, but the Black Blocs, they were just like, no, anarchy, tear down everything or nothing.
Yeah, it's anarchy, but tear down everything and then replace it with communism. Where I love the oxymoronic, axioms they go by. I'm a communist anarchist. They say that. I'm like, are you a freaking retard? How are you for anarchy and for communism at the same time? It's Orwellian doublethink at its finest.
Yeah, and then you got the anarcho-capitalist version too. It's like there's so many different variants of this thing, but ultimately it's mystical, right? Because they hate what exists.
Yeah.
They want to destroy what exists. And in some cases, there's some legitimacy to their desire to destroy evil. And I mean, there's a lot of evil in the current system. But then their idea of what do you replace it with is literally just this mystical, well, then we're going to have utopia and everything. We're just going to like self-organize around these little like mini communes of like, love and whatever. And then progress is going to happen, or whatever your idea of progress is. Some people's idea of progress is then like just going back to nature and having no more technology. Some people say, oh, like you got some variants of libertarianism who are like, okay, then we're going to have a blossoming of creative discoveries and new inventions, and Tesla, everyone's going to ride a Tesla, and and then you got that variant too. Like I think you got Catherine Austin Fitts, who tends to sort of promote that one. Think local, get rid of governments, get rid of everything, and then all of a sudden we're going to have this mystical global,
yeah, it's not gonna happen. That's all
sparing species that will just happen, right?
Yeah, sure, exactly. I laugh at people who make statements like that have an incredibly ignorant grasp of human nature, human history, and economies, and how that functions and works.
No, it's
it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's like give me one example where that's ever worked. Just totally like shutting off all nation states, all planning, all just and where has that ever produced some benefit of building infrastructure, water systems, electricity grids? Like where did that work? I know where things have been built with planning and with national dirigism. I know many examples of that having occurred over the centuries. And then I could show you examples where applying like grafting on a libertarian, privatize everything doctrine onto the system results in like private, PPPs and essentially atrophy. Like, you're just trying to extract money out of the infrastructure that has been built by taxpayer money at some point earlier. And then that will, seem to give you money for a period, maybe a few decades, but you're no longer investing in maintaining or improving it. And then you got the crisis like we have now, where 80% of our infrastructure is beyond anything resembling safety standards, and needing $5 trillion just to like get it up to something that is not deadly.
Yeah, but you know what? We're discovering new genders every week, Matthew. Yeah. That's what's more important.
That is a high priority. That is very important.
To boldly go where no gender has gone before, my friend.
Oh shit! I forgot to mention. So for the Occupy Wall Street thing, just to finish that story
yes.
up, they ended up voting to ban us from speaking and being anywhere within like a 20 meter radius of it. And we had like a political table with literature and everything, and it was with the LaRouche organization at the time I was volunteering with, and all of a sudden we have a giant mob. We weren't even invited to the debate not even a debate, but the vote where everyone was induced to vote for kicking us out and shutting us down. We weren't invited. We were just told all of a sudden. We saw 30 people dressed in black all of a sudden surround us and tell us that this happened. We have to go. When we resisted a little bit and called for like a discussion, they punched one of us, threw the table over, pulled another member, like got really violent. And this is their like democratic people's power type of mentality.
Oh yeah.
And we stayed the hell away from that Soros funded operation at that point forward.
Unbelievable.
But unbelievable. You can see how quickly if you lose a sense, again, it goes back to what I was saying, right? If you atomize society and you get people to think about their hedonistic flesh and senses as what is primary to them, like my gender and my sexual preference and my racial whatever affiliation, that is what defines me as me, you lose your humanity. It's like those are important things. Your gender and all of those things and your race, that's important. But what's more important first and foremost is your humanity. There's something universal about all human beings, which is first and foremost, which is tied to, amongst other things, the fact that you are aware of your mortality and you're aware of things that came before you existed, and you can make the world better and leave something better behind for your kids, grandkids, and others, and make the world a slightly better place, and pursue wisdom while you're alive, right? Pursue self-perfect and try to reduce your ignorance while you're alive, and put your works, your life into creating as many good works as possible. that's something all human beings, at all times, a million years in the future, well, maybe I don't know if there are humans a million years in the past, but regardless of what time you're looking at, that is still valid. And all of these critical race theory victims have all been induced to think that no, what makes them them is just like, I'm a non-binary cisgender, blah, blah, blah. I am whatever this material thing is, and thus oppressed because, every little quality is a minority, and everything that is a minority is oppressed by a majority, I'm told. So I have to feel like a victim striving for vengeance and righting the wrongs of my minority group. And you just totally screw over yourself, your ability to access, your universal characteristics, which is what is necessary if you're going to be a sovereign individual, which is necessary if you're going to have a sovereign country. You have to have sovereign individuals who resolve their freedom duty paradox, right? And align increasingly their desires, their freedom with a sense of duty and law, which is part of living in a universe of law, right? You have to want to do good. You can't just do good because you're told to do good, or else you're going to go to jail.
Right.
That might be good for some people to keep them controlled, but for the most part, you want people to want to do good, to realize that it's better than causing your soul to suffer by doing bad. That's why you have a conscience. So you want to satisfy that, and that's what the Constitution and Declaration of Independence was all about. Was getting people to have the challenge at every generation to both abide by the general welfare in the Constitution, as well as honor and protect the inalienable rights of the individual in the Declaration, as two sides of the same thing, to veer towards. So to the degree that we can't do that, we can't really refute the idea that we're overpopulated. We can't really refute the idea that we need a Leviathan lording above us all to keep order, the way Henry Kissinger or Klaus Schwab have to be corralled and herded to maintain peace and order. We can't refute that. We have to, you have to think differently.
Yeah, exactly right. Matty, great broadcast as always. And folks, again, this is Matt and I working on maybe 3 to 4 hours of sleep. And, check us out again. Go over to Matthew's website, risingtidefoundation.net. Get his books. His books are absolutely phenomenal and integral into understanding the geopolitical, geostrategic, geoeconomic landscape as it is today. And folks, we'll be back on YouTube April 12th, Matt. They're finally dropping all charges against us, and we'll be out of YouTube jail officially April 12th.
I can't believe they're letting you back into YouTube land.
I know.
What are they thinking?
I don't know. It's only when we go back, we'll be as restored virgins with no check marks, strikes, nothing against us whatsoever, Matt. As if it would never
have given you your cherry back. That's
yes,
that's rare. Eh? Your moral cherry.
We're restored virgins yet again. And then it's only going to take me and CJ about a week or two before we're back in the penalty box. Oh my God! Thank you so much, buddy. And folks, again, go to Matthew's website. The links will all be in the description box. And with that being said, we're over and out. I'm going to bed. Cheers.